For more on that story, we're joined now by our international affairs editor, Armen Georgian. Hi, Armen.
Hi.
Now, as I mentioned, that deadline that Emmanuel Macron gave them has expired. What's this down to, do you think?
Well, remember in the past, it sometimes took months to form a government in Lebanon. This time they had only 2 weeks, according to this deadline. That was a pretty ambitious timetable, considering that the old political forces are still very much there, still trying to have their say over who goes into the cabinet. So the problem that the Prime Minister-designate is having is that some of these powerful political forces want to have their people in certain ministries. The most recent obstacle has been who should get the finance ministry. That's obviously a very sensitive post.
Role,
not just because of the economic crisis, but also the future of talks with the IMF and what kind of package the Lebanese government is willing to negotiate with the Monetary Fund, and whether Lebanon is willing to accept perhaps more austerity, higher taxes, and things that could push people further into poverty. So this is obviously a very critical time, and it's important to get the government right. But essentially what the Prime Minister is finding, and this is where the sense of déjà vu comes in, is that the previous Prime Minister, Hassan Diab, also promised a government of experts rather than politicians. He said, we'll get these technocrats in, they'll get things done, they won't be politicking all the time. But what we actually saw was that in that previous government, those powerful sectarian blocs in parliament were still having a lot of influence on the cabinet. It looks like they're trying to do the same thing this time round again.
Now, you spoke there of the critical situation in terms of Lebanon's finances, the real danger of many people falling into dangerous levels of poverty. Prior to that disaster in Beirut last month, Lebanon was suffering from a serious recession, a currency crisis. So how have the events of August in the port of Beirut further forced the financial situation to deteriorate in Lebanon?
I mean, obviously the political paralysis itself is not helping the Lebanese economy. The Economist Intelligence Unit says it expects Lebanon's economy to contract by 20% by the end of this year, by the end of 2020. So that's a pretty major contraction. In terms of the actual impact of the port blast, let's show you a chart now with some figures. So you might remember in early August, President Macron worked with the United Nations to unlock this pledge of 250 million euros to help immediate reconstruction in the port area. But if you contrast that with the World Bank assessment of damages and losses from the port blast, it runs into billions of euros. So we can see there at the bottom of the chart, up to 3.8 billion euros in damages, up to 2.9 billion euros in losses. What was pledged in early August is just a fraction of what is needed, and that is simply, we're talking about reconstruction around the port. We're not even talking about the bigger, much deeper problem of reviving the Lebanese economy, which has been in such trouble and was even before this port blast. So that's why the international community considers these reforms to be so important. And you might remember that in 2018, there was a donors conference in Paris. Billions of euros were pledged, but they were conditional on those reforms being carried out. The reforms didn't materialize, and so the money didn't materialize either.
They are indeed staggering figures coming out of Lebanon there. Thank you very much, Armen Georgian, for your analysis of the situation.